Have you ever heard of a man who joined the mafia, not for money or power, but to save his brother from the clutches of death? You might be thinking this is just another made-up gangster story, but hold on because it's true. And the craziest part is that this guy actually lived to tell the tale. Recently, a former hitman revealed his incredible story of how he joined the Italian-American mafia and survived an attempt on his life. Let's dive into the details of this crazy story. But before we begin, remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more updates. Also, stick around till the end to learn about the unbelievable deal that saved our protagonist's life. It's a plot twist you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's get started. Coming from humble beginnings in New York City, Frank Sheeran was born on February 26, 1920. His family was poor and his parents couldn't afford to buy him and his 4 siblings proper shoes, let alone clothes or food. Nevertheless, they were a happy family until his father passed away. When Frank was only 12 years old, with no steady income, his mother struggled to make ends meet, and as a result, Frank had to drop out of school in the 6th grade to help support the family. From an early age, he learned to fight and developed a passion for boxing, which became his primary means of defending himself on the streets. Little did he know that these skills would later serve him well in the dangerous world he was about to enter. As a teenager, Frank turned to petty crimes such as theft and robbery to survive. He even found himself in jail for stealing a car. However, his luck changed when he met a woman named Antoinette, who would become his wife and introduce him to her uncle, a member of the Genovese crime family. This meeting marked a turning point in Frank's life, leading him to join the mafia under the guidance of his new mentor. He learned the tricks and strategies of the trade and quickly rose through the ranks. By the time he was 24, he had become one of the most trusted members of the family and was assigned to work as a bodyguard for a local mob boss. However, everything changed when the boss's son, Anthony, was arrested on murder charges. Despite his father's connections, Anthony was sentenced to life in prison, leaving the family in turmoil. The situation took a darker turn when another member of the family, Crazy Joe Gallo, decided to testify against them in exchange for immunity. This meant that many members of the family, including Frank, were at risk of being arrested. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Frank knew he had to act fast. He enlisted the help of a close friend, Tony, to protect himself and his family from potential harm. Together, they devised a plan to eliminate Joe Gallo and prevent him from testifying. Meanwhile, tensions were high within the family, as everyone was on edge, fearing for their own safety. The pressure was immense, and the atmosphere was thick with distrust and suspicion. As the situation deteriorated, Frank and his wife grew increasingly concerned about their young child. Unaware that their worst fears were about to become a reality, it's a shocking turn of events, Joe Gallo was assassinated right in front of Frank's wife and kids. This was a blatant message to anyone who might consider crossing the family. The shockwaves of this hit sent chills down everyone's spines, solidifying the family's grip on the neighborhood and sending a clear warning to any potential defectors. The murder served as a grim reminder of the consequences of betrayal and solidified the family's reputation for ruthlessness and power. Now, as the news of Joe's murder spread like wildfire, a sense of fear and uncertainty gripped the entire community. People were shocked and saddened by the senseless loss of life and worried about what it meant for the future of the neighborhood. As the police investigated the crime, many residents were afraid to come forward with any information, fearing retaliation from the family. It seemed as though the mafia had struck again, leaving the community divided and fearful. On the other hand, Frank was determined to move up in the mafia and earn the respect and trust of his fellow members. He knew that to succeed in this world, he had to be willing to do whatever it takes, even if it meant putting his life on the line. So he continued to carry out dangerous missions, eliminating those who crossed the family and consolidating their power in the community. As he climbed the ranks, he also formed alliances with other powerful families, expanding his influence and cementing his legacy as a feared and respected mobster. During his time in the mafia, Sheeran allegedly played a significant role in several high-profile cases. One of the most infamous cases he was involved in was the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa, the former president of the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Hoffa had been a powerful labor leader who had allegedly amassed a fortune through his connections to organized crime. However, in 1957, he was convicted of bribery and conspiracy and sentenced to 13 years in prison. Despite his incarceration, Hoffa continued to exert his influence and became a thorn in the side of the Mafia, who saw him as a threat to their interests. According to Sheeran, he was the one who shot Hoffa in the back of the head on the orders of Anthony, who was known for his violent temper and ruthless efficiency. Sheeran's account of the hit was chillingly matter-of-fact, leaving little doubt that he was involved in one of the most notorious unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. As Frank climbed the ladder of success in the Mafia, his brother-in-law Anthony started to feel threatened. Initially, Anthony had been supportive of Frank's rise through the ranks and had even helped him to secure his position. However, as Frank became more powerful and influential, Anthony became increasingly jealous and resentful. This jealousy turned to paranoia when Anthony began to suspect that Frank was secretly plotting to take over his position within the family. The tension between the two men grew until it reached a boiling point, and they eventually had a falling out. Despite their falling out, Frank still had a soft spot for his brother-in-law and didn't want to see him get hurt. However, Anthony's paranoia and instability made him a liability to the family, and Frank knew that something had to be done. One day, Frank was summoned by the boss of the family to a meeting where he was given an ultimatum. He had to choose between his loyalty to the family and his personal feelings towards Anthony. Ultimately, Frank chose the family and agreed to have Anthony eliminated. The hit on Anthony was swift and brutal, sending shockwaves through the family and the community. Many members of the family were shocked by the ruthlessness of the move, while others saw it as a necessary evil to protect the family's interests. As news of Anthony's death spread, Frank found himself increasingly isolated within the family. Many members blamed him for the death of Anthony, and some even began to question his loyalty. Despite the backlash, Frank remained steadfast in his commitment to the family and continued to carry out his duties. He knew that there was no turning back and that he had to prove himself to his fellow mobsters. However, it wasn't long before Frank found himself in over his head. After the hit on Anthony, the family became the target of a police investigation. Law enforcement officials had been tracking the family's activities for some time, and the death of Anthony provided the opportunity they needed to crack the case. As the net tightened around the family, Frank knew that it was only a matter of time before he was caught. To make matters worse, one of the family's former associates had turned rat and was providing the police with valuable information. This betrayal came as a shock to Frank, who had always trusted his associates implicitly. He had never expected one of them to turn against the family, but he soon learned that in the world of organized crime, trust was a luxury one couldn't afford. Realizing that his time was running out, Frank made a desperate move. He approached the boss of the family and offered to take the fall for the entire organization. He confessed to the crimes that the police were investigating and offered to plead guilty in exchange for immunity for the other members of the family. This was a risky move, as it meant that he would be going down in flames and taking the secrets of the family with him. But it was a move that ultimately saved the lives of his fellow mobsters and protected the secrets of the Mafia. With Frank behind bars, the police were left empty-handed, unable to gather any substantial evidence against the remaining members of the family. The case went cold, and the family was able to regroup and continue their operations. Frank served his prison sentence knowing that he had protected his fellow mobsters and kept the secrets of the Mafia alive. When he was finally released, he was greeted by a hero's welcome from the remaining members of the family, who saw him as a martyr, who had sacrificed everything to protect their way of life. And that's all for today. If you liked this video, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button for more amazing stories. See you next time.